Hello, today's video is called Chaos or Setup. Today was day 9 of the public inquiry to the Federal Government of Canada for invoking the Emergency Act on February 2022. Today is October 25th, 2022. The agenda for today is overview, key details, today's witnesses, and my point of view. As everyone knows, we're doing a daily review of the witnesses that are providing testimonies in this inquiry that seek to understand if Justin Castro had valid reasons to invoke the Emergency Act on February 14 of this year, and if the powers that he used and the federal government overall exceeded the scope granted by the Act. Based on these findings, the lead commissioner would put forward a recommendation in both English and French to the federal government by February 2023. Please remember, this is not a trial, it's an inquiry. All my videos are available on YouTube, Lisa Bruce Research, as well as my own website, lisabruceresearch.com. And here you can see the link to the live feed and the repository of previous inquiry sessions that is available for everyone to watch. Yesterday, I recapped some key details that I think that facilitate the understanding of the information we're reviewing every day. So if you want details about this, please go back to day 8. And in the first 10 minutes, I explain everything. Today, I'll just leave them. If you want to stop the screen, you can use them, but I can't, again, use 10 minutes of today's video to explain the same. So if you need help with anything, please just write a comment and I'll be happy to help. Here are all the jurisdictions and the short forms. Here is a timeline. Here are the key locations, previous testimonies, not from the police force, order from good to bad, according to me. Previous testimonies from the police force. Up to this point, all police force was good to me. Today, we're going to change a little bit that. The summary, that is very important. And then here you can see what is required to invoke the Emergency Act. And here you're going to see the two positions that are going to be clear throughout the series of witnesses, because they're going to be either be supporting the invoking the Emergency Act and not supporting the Act. Today we had 3 witnesses. It was between 9:30 and 6:30 p.m. The first witness was Inspector Russell Locus, and he was, or is, he's still active OPS Incident Commander. He really is a set of contradictions. I didn't like this witness at all, I'm going to say from the beginning. He was talking about the fact that everybody was expecting for the convoy to leave, but all the information that he was presented with, it was stating that every single piece of intelligence was saying that the convoy was here to stay. Everything that he was anchoring his decision and his perspective was based on experience that in the past they had had different protests, including against the mandates. Actually, I remember being in one of those in Ottawa, and it was short-lived. It was just 1 or 2 days. So that was his experience. That's why he kept on misreading, perhaps, the intelligence. Here you have more contradictions saying that there were some social media stating that potential raiding of the parliament, which, by the way, it never happened. So clearly placing too much weight on this was an assessment that should have never been done. And his own notes are actually stating that all the indicators were to show that the convoy was here in Ottawa to stay. He doesn't work on building a plan. He just prays, his words. I was praying that it would be really, really cold weather. Well, that's not good enough. You are supposed to be in charge of the incident. You're the commander. So praying is not really what you should be doing. And then delaying. So he was saying, well, we will short staff. So I gave the direction to the different officers just to observe, make notes, and then at a later time we would lay charges, because at that point in time it was not feasible based on the reduction of the personnel to actually proceed with even giving tickets or arrests. So that's his position. He has a consistent lack of logic through his questions and answers. So here I'm going to place just some of those. Here he's saying this document, for example, that he was helping in circulating and creating, it was supposed to be approved by Slowly, and Slowly is the chief of police in that point in time, and then there is not a space and a line for him to sign. So clearly that's not logical. Here you see inability to take responsibility. He's being asked, do you think that there was a disconnection between the intelligence and the plans? And his answer included a phrase, well, we had very little time to react. First of all, that's not true. And second, that's not a logical answer. You're not taking responsibility for your actions. He used the word chaotic when referring to the environment within the police internally, and also reiterated that the OPS was not aligned with the PLTs. So remember, we have talked about this several times. It's pretty clear, and in the next testimony, we're going to hear more of the same. Slowly had relationship issues with his staff because of the magical virus. So it's just one excuse after the next one. So clearly he's aligned with Slowly, and I don't even understand why he was called as a witness. He continuously presents arguments that lack any logic, and he says he did well as an organization overall because they were able to have buses operating in the first weekend and all emergency lanes were open. Again, not really very helpful at this stage. Now, one thing that I notice is that there is a consistency not only of avoiding responsibility, but also to deny knowing things that are known to every single person. So I don't like the word waiting to be processed because that word, I don't know, just I guess it triggers me. But the counselor for the convoy organization was asking, listen, there were people in line waiting to be processed without proper shelter. It was minus 24, and then people could have suffered of hypothermia. And what did you do about that? Well, I don't know anything about that. I can't speak about that. And then the counselor also asked, there were people who were taken to the middle of roads and then left there. And officers were saying, oh, they will find a way to leave. And he was asked, well, what about that? Is that anything you knew? No, I don't recall. I don't know. So evading responsibility and denial. The plan was always changing, and he said daily, which I really don't think that's the case. The formal, proper plans, we're going to see it in the third witness, were very specific. Obviously, they were not very robust and very strong, but they were not changing daily. Actually, for many days, there was no plan. So he's just all over the place. He's really not very useful. Now, one thing that he said that actually was very interesting to me is that the template for the plans in Canada are based on NATO. So I shouldn't be surprised, but there it is. Here, confirming that Slowly approach was confrontational because he said, we are not giving them 1 inch. So at this point, I felt like Slowly was opening the doors to the city, creating this chaos purposely in downtown when typically trucks or cars were never allowed in previous protests. And it gave Ferguson also 2 days off, remember, before the 13th Monday. And I think he did it to lead the strategic operation to create even more chaos and justify invoking the act. Then because he was let go, he was asked to resign, and he resigned after the invocation of the act. Nobody could hold him accountable. So at my big picture perspective at this point is that it was all a setup and not necessarily just chaos. It was purposely being created to make sure that this convoy was going to be crushed. And I just don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that's my belief. Now, the second witness was Inspector Marcel Boudin. He's an acting superintendent. In the beginning, I wrote, oh my gosh, his contribution is 0, because he was very casual and also he was not adding a lot of value. So you can stop the screen and read the expressions that he was using, which I have never come across in any court of law or any inquiry for that matter, even a boardroom. I've never sat down in a boardroom with people talking like this. So I don't understand why he was so casual about it. Perhaps it's because of the background and his role. However, on the second portion of his testimony, I found very interesting that he and Patricia Ferguson were getting along in terms of being aligned in terms of the plan. So he clearly was adding a lot of value. I have Patricia Ferguson in a very good light for now. I don't know if more things will bubble up that will make me change my mind. but Patricia and him were in contact. In fact, in a moment, he said Patricia, and then he corrected himself because obviously that's not the proper ranking manner. But obviously, they were getting along because they were aligned intellectually about what needed to be done. And they're both in a very conciliatory perspective of how things should be resolved. And then he said that about 60% of the convoy could have been managed through the conversation with Tom Marazzo. And now it makes more sense as to why Steve Kay sat down and talked with him on the second week of the presence in Ottawa. Slowly never met with him, never met with Inspector Boudin. I am very surprised about that because, again, it just comes to ratify my previous theory, conspiracy theory, that indicates that Slowly was just setting up chaos to justify the invocation of the act. On February 13, Watson, and I'm talking about the mayor of Ottawa, met with Tamara Lynch, and they agreed that some trucks were going to be moved out of downtown into Wellington. Remember that that's the back of Parliament Hill, where there's a lot of space that is void, and they would have been controlled out of the residence. And then this is the first time I hear about that, so I really have to do a little bit more of research, but it says that on February 13, the Major Watson met with Tamara Lynch to move the trucks to Wellington, and it didn't happen, and that's when the police reported that all negotiations were futile, and then they had to move to operate under different circumstances. I disagree with that statement because we have an email from yesterday from Loki, that is the highest rank on RCMP, before 8 p.m. on February 13, saying, I don't support calling the Emergency Act. Here we can see how he prepared a plan that he presented to Loki, the RCMP, and it was presented behind him knowing to the government. So I don't know how to read that, because if the plan was presented as he created it, then that's not a problem. But if they took his plan and never gave him credit, then that's a different conversation. But again, we don't know enough. Here we can see when the Ottawa police was asking some questions, not really that interesting or important from my perspective. Then Ottawa Coalition said the PLT had already negotiated the removal of the gas from Coventry Road, or the arrests would follow. So that's the way they were going to trade. I won't arrest you, but you have to move your gas. So the convoy from Coventry Road, that I remember that is east of downtown, separated by the highway, so it's far away. They started to move the gas, and they moved it to downtown, which actually contradicts the objective, from what I see, in terms of reducing the risk of having a potential explosion or any risk for everyone, including the convoy itself. And nobody told them where to move them, so they went to downtown and they were arrested. So obviously that is chaotic. Obviously, to me, it sounds like a setup, but we don't know. Now, the lead commissioner had a cross-examination with him, and his question was there an option or a place offered to the demonstrators who wanted to continue their protest in a peaceful manner to go somewhere else? And then he answered, well, they could set up whatever, but a conversation would happen or whatever. I'm quoting him. That's the way he talks. So then he finished his sentence by saying, we were in dire need to regain the streets to return to normalcy. So clearly what I'm hearing is a lot of not being helpful, but maybe because the lead commissioner said, thank you very much, you were very helpful. And I'm thinking, how is he being helpful? He's just not even answering the question. But then I thought about the option, well, maybe he's being helpful by indirectly answering the question, which in my eyes should not be the case. You should be direct in the way you answer your questions if you want to be helpful. The third and final witness was Robert Bernier, which I was really looking forward, because this is actually the person who was appointed as the superintendent, the major incident operation commander, and I knew that Patricia Ferguson was supportive of this individual. So very interesting. There were some notes from Bernier that were showing that from the beginning of the presentation of any type of plan, he was questioning the lack of an alternative plan, or saying, why is this, why is that, what can we do over and above? So apparently in writing, we can see that not apparently, actually the notes are shown here. We can see that from the beginning, he's the only one who's questioning this, and he even shares his concerns with his boss, and his boss is Drummond, and nothing happens. So I'm not clear as to why, even though he said to Drummond, well, there's a bizarre, he used the word bizarre in these documents, bizarre disconnect between the Hendon report, I wrote here project, but it's report, the Hendon report, that is the intelligence gathered and presented by Morris, and the OPS plan. So everybody's saying, within the context of this conversation, at least two people are saying, okay, there's a bizarre disconnect, but they don't escalate, they don't do anything about it. So that's odd to me. These are visuals of the plans. Interesting to see how where different plans, and then we're going to see later the final one. As of February 3rd, nobody knows what the plan is. So you can see here that Bernier is even asking for a file coordinator just to be assigned to organize what is the plan. And I think that was just talking about the level of chaos. You don't even know how many plans there are. Remember, Patricia, when she came back from the 2 days off, was also confused about what is the plan. Now, from February 10, there is no plan. Patricia approached him asking for a plan, and he deferred to Patterson. And that makes a lot of sense, because Patricia is actually jumping a lot of layers, so to speak, to go directly to a person that clearly she thought could create the plan that would work. So that didn't work in that point in time, but later she was instrumental to appoint him as the operational commander of the major incidents. So here you can see February 9, the plan V30 was created to support the 1,800 resources from the request from Slowly from February 7. So interesting to note. So the dates here are a little bit bizarre, because you can write February 9 but send it, let's say, at midnight. So the people, in this case, he only read it on the 10th at 6 a.m. He says he wakes up. So clearly you can see how the dates could be a little bit fussy for certain people. And the plan was flawed. But not only that, I really think it's interesting that he says that this plan was created to support the request for resources from Slowly. So you can see how this substantiates a little bit of what was the matter of discussion in a couple of days ago, on which they were saying, well, if I want 100 people, I'll ask for 200. So Slowly first ask for the people, and then put everyone to work urgently to create a plan that support the 1,800. So Bernier says that there were elements missing, and the focus was very tactical, not very strategic in terms of closing the whole situation in Ottawa. Here, another example, the right hand not knowing what the left one is doing. On February 10, he's asking to please ensure that the teams are talking between each other to make sure that they have a cohesive plan, because the plans were not aligning. So to me, this feels so unprofessional. I can't even believe that he becomes a hero in the nth hour, when in reality, he's not doing anything else than very basic questions and logic. I wrote here, even a kid would have a better plan to steal the cookies from the jar. Like, these people sound so unprofessional and lost. In reality, all you have to do is, what is the situation? How many people are coming? You brief them and you delegate. There's nothing more complicated. If you are that type of person, if you're the chief of police, for you, that should be easy. Well, apparently it was not. Here from February 10, Ferguson asks him to be the chief commander. He accepts with certain conditions. Number one, he removes Slowly, and the reason he says is because he has seen how tactical and how tactical Slowly is, and also how he interferes all the time with a lot of situations, demotivate the people. So he said, I want him away. So I will take the position, but I have to be away from Slowly. I want Inspector Springer, who used to be very close to me in other operations. I trust him, and I need a deputy event commander, so he has to be the person. I also want full autonomy for my decisions, and to find a solution to this situation, I also need the afternoon off. I need to rest, and tomorrow I'll sit down with Springer and I'll set up this properly. So interesting. Patricia Ferguson immediately said, I'll get you everything you want. I'll get you everything you want. And eventually he gets appointed. My point of view, score for the first witness is, if I could give him less, I don't know why I wrote 1. Well, I think it's because he's just ratifying that people are not working in a cohesive manner. He was very evasive in the questions. He was extremely illogical, and he was denying knowledge of inhumane conditions and what is I know catch and release is different in the US, but to me it was you grab them, you put them in a car, and you let them in the middle of a road at minus 22 degrees without a phone. And some of these witnesses say they were beaten up, and I've seen pictures of that. So really bad that this man and everybody else is going to say, oh, I don't know about that. The second witness, Budan, I give him 9 out of 10, very casual on his language. It was very hard for me to listen. But at the end of the day, the value of his insight was showing us how chaotic was inside, and most importantly, giving the importance of BLT and his experience and his ability to perhaps have helped to elevate the conversation, come to a peaceful resolution, and then slowly blocking him, not even meeting him. And it's just, again, my theory of maybe this chaos was purposely created. The final witness, which, by the way, we will have more from him tomorrow, Bernier, I give him 8.5 on 10. He comes across as truthful, and he's very focused, very clear. And it feels to me like he was the only person capable of logic and critical thinking in the whole organization, which I really don't understand. I believe he wanted to work within the charter. He wrote it many times, but the reality is that by the time we reached that point in time, the charter had already been violated, because we all know that the fact that you cannot have bodily autonomy is a violation to even basic human rights, forget about the charter. And I don't know how I feel about his plan, because ultimately it did not ensure that there was a peaceful avenue for the convoy to keep on protesting and achieving our goals. I think, and I thank every trucker from the bottom of my heart, I really think that they moved the needle in our favor. And at the same time, I feel that there was not a very positive resolution for the events in Ottawa. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.